Hello and welcome to another episode of With Enough Prep Time. I'm your host, the Nerd Man. I've just done a very long discussion on the history of race bending in comics, and I think it was a really interesting discussion. It went on a little bit long, and I might break it down into pieces, but I would love, everyone's. I would love feedback on that discussion. But today we're going to be speaking about, again, the same thing, which is Supergirl being race bent in the upcoming Flashpoint movie. And, my first thought is that I didn't even think of this as a problem when I first saw her being cast. It was actually quite strange to me that that the young woman being cast, who is Sasha Cali, who derives from Boston. I thought, oh, okay, they're going to dye her hair blonde. No big problem, right? She's Supergirl. But then a whole bunch of articles and the things came on YouTube discussing about spending and virtue signaling and how this is an example of that. And I just thought, what a strange, I really, of all the situations, especially because when you race bend from white to black, there's actually like some kind of dramatic difference. But are we now saying that Latino people cannot play white people? I guess because white people can't play Latino people, but that's certainly you can't do that. But you can actually have, it's okay on the other hand to have Latino people play white people. Now you might say that there's some hypocrisy in that, but my first thought was they're not making Supergirl into they're not actually making her into a Latino. They're just hiring a Latino actress to play Supergirl. Maybe she might be a bit darker skinned than we're usually expected to in Supergirl. But in general, I don't see what the problem is. I go to a YouTuber that I have a lot of respect for. I really love her channel. I think she always talks about things really, really intelligently and gives me the skinny on, certain views that I disagree with, but I think she puts her point forward very eloquently. And I just want to find out from her, does she have an issue with Supergirl being race bent into a Latino and what that problem might be? And then secondly, I want to, obviously compare it to Superman. Superman is quite different for me. In terms of race bending, I think he's a character where it does matter if he's race bent, but obviously Supergirl is a bit different, and we'll discuss that. I might compare it to the Fantastic Four. Okay.
Say, oh bloody hell, it's not worth watching. Not only that, but they're going to take most of the real. I've seen it, but we have Supergirl because she has been officially cast today, and I did post this on my community post, so you may have seen it. But we have a Young and the Restless star. Her name is Sasha Cali, and I did watch the video where Andy was telling her, the director.
She kind of looks a little bit like she could be Supergirl.
Very heartwarming. So I want to make it clear that I have nothing against this girl, and this could work out, right? But we're going to talk a little bit about the idea that they're going with. Now, the rumor is she will be a multiversal character, right? She's coming from an alternate universe. Most of the Flash will actually take place in a alternate universe. Most of it will not even be in our reality. Now, she is
honestly, you make that girl blonde, and she's kind of a light-skinned Latina. I mean, she's really, really light-skinned. So you make her blonde. I don't see that she's just a darker skinned white girl, basically. There are many white women who have just got like, slightly darker skin. I've seen many Welsh women. I don't know what their genealogy is, if they, do have Mediterranean heritage, and that's why they're darker skin. But certainly, I see a lot of Latina women who are purely white. Just straight up white. If you go to Brazil, you go to, or you go to Spain, they're just absolutely white, right? And then there's ones that are a little bit more, on the darker end of the spectrum. So for me, I just it doesn't comprehend to me why you'd even have a problem once this girl goes blonde. And even if she's dark-haired, again, I talked about this in length on my other video about whether it's the core, whether there's anything going against the core of the character of Supergirl. Supergirl is Superman's cousin. She lands on Earth. She's found by Superman, essentially, and they're cousins, they're family, right? There is nothing in that says she can't be black. She can't be. You can have a black cousin. You can have a white cousin. It's very different. Like, say, Fantastic Four, Van Forstic did this some time ago, where they race bent Johnny Storm. And they basically race bent Johnny Storm, and it was like they kept the sister white. And okay, let's look for a Fantastic Forecast. That will probably be a better way of doing it. So they kept the sister white when in fact Johnny Storm was a black guy, right? So that was kind of strange, because they never even go into explaining why, and he's got a black dad as well, and they never go into explaining why, they have a white daughter. So that's kind of strange. But I think Superman is of a far enough distance, being a cousin, where you have cousins who look like all sorts. I've got cousins who look white, mixed race. There's so much mix in my family that, a cousin could be anything. Like I could have an Indian cousin, with the dynamics of my family. So to me, this isn't really, a problem if Clark Kent has a slightly darker skinned cousin. It just doesn't register for me as even. I don't even think this is race bending. I don't even think this particular one is race swapping at all. It's the same race. They're both Caucasian,
totally
essentially.
Different, but is going to come back with Michael Keaton.
Look at Andy Muschietti. Apparently, he's Latino. Does he look Latino to you? Andy Muschietti could just as easily pass for an American white, dude man. So Andy Muschietti, right there, with Latinas, it's a very, very big mix. With white people, it's a very, very big mix. With black people, it's a big mix of how light skinned to dark skinned they are, right? And it's the same. It's like me saying, there's a tribe of people in Africa who are extremely light skinned and have very wavy hair, right? And they're like an Igbo tribe, very beautiful tribe, actually. Really good-looking people come from that tribe. And I'm Yoruba, right? Very sexy people come from there as well. A bit different looking, but like sexy in a different way. But this Igbo tribe, right? They're light-skinned and whatever. And if you said that one of them was my family, if you said to a white person one of them was my family, they'll be like, they wouldn't even think twice about it. If you said this girl right here was the little sister to Andy Muschietti, nobody would bat an eyelid about that. If you say I'm Andy Muschietti's brother, then people might think, what the fuck? Like, there's a story there. There's a cool story there. Tell me about it. But if you say these two are sisters, if you say this person she's Henry Cavill's cousin, right? no one's going to think twice about it. They'll be like, oh, all right, like, 'cause there's a little bit of mix somewhere in the family. Boom. No, nobody asks any questions. You say, I'm Henry Cavill's twin brother, then you have questions. Like, what happened to you, JP? Why do you look like that? And he looks like, but but that's the point here. That's what I'm not comprehending in anybody even bringing this up. As like, are you like, is this a thing where you're so consistent with your critique of race swapping that even when it's not race swapping, it's just somebody from a different nation, essentially, or who has a different national roots? Because she's from Boston, right? She's grown up in Boston, of all places, and people are worried about if she's not American pie enough to play Supergirl, and it's so weird. But I'll listen to
and with Ezra Miller, so with Batman and with Flash, and how it's looking now, and what worries me the most is we have Supergirl. We don't have any confirmation that Henry Cavill is continuing. There's always rumors. But until you actually see DC say it, we have no confirmation, right? So we have Supergirl coming back to this Earth. Okay, there's one. There's our super character. Then the rumor is,
yeah, I mean, and it's kind of an odd thing here that she's right about this. Like they're trying to make Supergirl, Wonder Woman, and Batwoman or Batgirl the DC Trinity in the DCEU, and that is going to flop hard. If Walter Hamada is behind this, it's the world's dumbest idea, and she's absolutely right about that. I don't know what that's got to do with her being race bent, essentially, but you know, she seems to be making a sensible point, and I don't want this video going on too long, so I'm going to just go into just a couple of things about Superman versus Supergirl. So there's a one might say, well, Superman's white, so Supergirl should be white, right? And I would say there is reasons why Superman, can't be, or like a mainstream Superman that follows the classical story of Superman has much more problems in terms of making him a white person. I go into a length on it on another video, but I'll just do a very small, synopsis of what I said, which was there are about 50,000 at the moment. I think the population of Kansas, there's about 50,000 farmers in Kansas. Only 210 of them are black. So unless you want to really fundamentally alter where Superman comes from, which I think is a big part of him being this big blue Boy Scout, he's a big farmer kid, right? Like he's raised with like these great human moral values, on the farm, working hard, working people of the land, and that's where he comes from. And it's a big part of the iconography of Superman that he comes from this place, Kansas, and then goes and to the big city. Right? Most black people do actually live in more of the big cities anyway. So moving to Metropolis wouldn't necessarily be a massive change for them, as you'd need it to happen with Superman. He needs to be small town Clark Kent moves to the big city. That's part of the iconography of Superman as well. So again, with them living in Kansas, it's very, very unlikely that a black kid is going to be dropped at a black family. And then if you have a black kid dropped at a white family, then there's all kinds of questions with the Kents of you can't just gloss over that. That has to be a story beat in any story where the Kents are a white family, farm family in Kansas, and they suddenly just come up, just have a black baby one day. So there has to be a story there. It would be an interesting story, but you'd have to tell that story for us to fully engage with the reality of Superman being black in a Superman film or piece of Superman media, which would be fine as long as they handle it and they handle it respectfully. But in general, I think Superman is a white character. But his cousin doesn't have such problems. So there's no fundamental, she could be mixed race, she could be Latina, she could be anything, because what's to say what happens with Kryptonians even when they have children? Maybe you can have a white Kryptonian have a different looking child, or maybe like their biology and genetics are completely different for one, so maybe it's more easier for their ancestry or other genes to show up and become the dominant genes in their children than in human beings, right? Like I don't know, but I'm just like spitballing here. But the point is that one, we can have cousins that look very, very different from us and come from different places and have different dads and mothers that have mixed up their gene pool to look very different from us. So that's one thing. And then secondly, you know, she doesn't land, she lands, she meets Superman first. Superman takes her under his wing, and then, you know, raises her to be the Supergirl. So that's it for me, really. You know, because I want to keep this video relatively short. And that's my kind of argument. I think this is perfectly fine. I think it's a, you know, I'm more worried about her acting than her race. If it's DC female Trinity thing than her racial complexion, because I think the DC Trinity thing is asinine. You know, if you want to do a DC female Trinity, what you should do Wonder Girl, Batgirl, and Supergirl movie. That would be lit. Anyway, that being said, I'm out, E. Thanks so much. Please give me a high five and like and subscribe. And I've got a link down to a really, really interesting discussion if you've got time just to listen to about you know, about race bending in comics in general. I think it's really interesting, you know, what to say in the discussion I had there. Thanks so much. Have a good one. Comment, please. Thanks so much, guys.